Hello, this is Dom from Blacktoad Studios, and I'm joined with
Tom from Blacktoad Studios.
and we have got another Friday faction focus, and today we are doing the Guard, the Astra Militarum.
Yeah.
So what we'll do is we'll go through how you play the army, how you collect the army, a bit of background on the army, and why you should collect them.
Yes.
So we're going to start off with a little bit of your experience, Tom, of playing the Imperial Guard and playing against the Imperial Guard. So let's call them Imperial Guard rather than going Astra Militarum. We could put Astra Militarum in a thumbnail.
How about the Imperial Militarum?
No.
Okay, we'll go.
We are not doing that.
Imperial Guard it is, yes. Imperial Guard, well, me. I actually have a Guard army.
You do have a Guard army?
I do have a Guard army, which is, experience of playing them. I haven't played them an awful lot, if I'm totally honest. Although, when I have done, I reasonably enjoyed it. I found that, I think with Guard you had to be pretty on the spot with your orders and stuff like that for your army to make sure you're getting the best out of them.
Yeah, pretty unforgiving.
And I think actually, a lot of people think it's just about lining up all your guns and firing off, because that's definitely what I probably thought when I picked them up first. I thought, it's just a shooting army; it should be fairly simple to play. But actually, I think there's quite a depth to the Guard to get them to play correctly. That's my experience of playing them. And yes, you've got your tanks and they can shoot, but getting your orders correct and along with all the stratagems on top of that to make them work effectively, I think it's actually quite a difficult thing to do if you haven't played it a lot. I think obviously an experienced Guard player should be fairly easy to do most of that. But knowing knowing what tanks and weapons to fire at what, and what infantry units and stuff to fire at what is very important as well. It's a lot of target selection because it is a lot of shooting. There's not really any combat really for Guard, I suppose. You might get an odd bayonet charge.
It's got a little bit of combat. There are
Ogrins maybe
elements there.
Yeah. It's not their key. It's not their key thing though. I think.
But they're pretty strong anyway. Yeah. But so what's your experience playing against Guard? Do you enjoy playing against Guard?
It depends which edition we're talking about.
Well, let's say the current edition.
Current edition, I have found it fairly fun to play against. Yes, because they're not as they used to be called, the leaf blower lists that they used to have back a few editions ago. This edition, I think they seem to be you can beat them obviously. In my opinion, it's not, you don't feel like, I can't get myself through all that. I mean, obviously, I've played a lot of your Guard armies. To be fair, we've played quite a few games together. I don't think we played many in 8th actually. I might have played your Scions a few times, but I don't think I've played your
Raw Guard games on 8th. My Scions definitely appeared quite a bit, and you played a Praetorian force.
I'm pretty sure we played. Oh yes, sorry, Praetorian. We did play Praetorian, didn't we? Yes.
Yeah.
But ultimately, depending on what you're playing against, they play all very quite differently sometimes, depending on what regiment you're playing against. They have quite a varied play style. It may not seem like a lot, but some of those rules do change the way an army works quite a bit, in my opinion, what you would take. But typically, I find them quite fun to play against because especially a good a good themed Guard army, they're quite fun. I think they're and I did almost forget about the Praetorian, which is quite bad because it's one of my favourite ones to play against as well.
Yeah, exactly.
The old red coats.
Yeah. So my experience of playing Guard, so I played Guard, I think Guard was one of the first armies I picked up back in the day when they're all the metal models. And I remember my Guard force essentially having one squad of Catachan, one squad of Valhalla, one squad of Cadian. Because back then it was just metal models.
Yeah.
You just go
all single pose whatever. As well. So.
Yeah. I mean, some of those models still stand up quite well, to be honest.
Yes.
Then I went for a mechanized list, lots of chimeras. Obviously, got my Guard army at the moment, which is probably about 7,000 points, maybe more. I don't know. I have to get it all out. And I got my Scions, like you said. So the Scions are the Stormtroopers.
Yes.
Which are a regiment in themselves, as it were.
Indeed.
So I think Guard, like you said about the close combat thing, to play them, you can have a theme, like whatever the theme you want, you can run with it, and I think it kind of opens up possibilities that you could possibly have an assault-based army if you really wanted to attempt that. Like you've got Catachans with an increased strength, You've got things to boost them, priests, etc. So you can do some stuff. You can also go an artillery army. You can go a tank army. You can go a mechanized army, troop army, airborne army. You've got like the options are endless. You can do whatever you want. And I think what I quite like about playing Guard is that you have that modern military feel to them, which obviously you don't necessarily have Space Marines.
No.
But you can associate yourself a bit more with the Guard, I think.
Yeah, so I mean, like I said, I play, but my army's quite artillery-esque based. That's kind of what I was going with, while also using Catachan rules for the strength increase to my men to make them Templar-esque.
Yeah, bit stronger.
Bit stronger. That's kind of the theme for mine anyway. So
yeah, like playing against them, I've played against a few Guard armies, like either in a tournament situation or just a friendly game. I don't normally play against Guard on the channel because there's not normally that many Guard players I can play against.
Me, basically, if you want to play me, but
but generally they, like I said, you can kind of go one way or another. So you can have artillery based, like your army's particularly artillery based. My Guard force is more tank based, and sometimes they tend to get merged in with other armies. So you can pop them in with AdMech maybe, or Marines or Knights. You had the Loyal 32, which is essentially just a very small battalion, command points. But I think Guard have got their own purposes. They can't just be used for getting a few more command points.
They're like the Swiss Army knife for 40k.
Yeah, they really enjoy kind of playing them and playing against them. Right. So we're going to go into a little bit about who the Guard actually are, Tom. And normally we'll go into a 30k and 40k aspect, but before we start this video, we just said there's a very tiny bit of 30k.
It's slightly irrelevant though, to be fair, isn't it? Yeah.
Which we'll go into is that there was the Imperial Army. So the Imperial Army was like a combination force of every aspect, like Imperial Navy, Imperial Guard. You had the air element of it as well. And obviously after the heresy, the Marine legions were cut up into chapters. And they also went, well, actually, Imperial Army is probably a good force that we need to cut up as well. And so they cut them.
Well, actually, it was mainly because the legions were in control of them, and they had no one to control them anymore. So that was quite an so they obviously split them into two wings, essentially, didn't they?
You can't have a force getting in their spaceships and going off.
No, that was the
independent with their ground elements,
especially the numbers they had. Especially the numbers,
they kind of split up. So that's when the Guard were born. And some of the tanks, obviously, back in those days, are still being used now in 40k, which is quite impressive. Obviously, the arsenals, these people must have a humongous fortress worlds, armory worlds, etc. So, let's say there's not much on 30k. So, Tom, 40k Astra Militarum, Elder Guard, can you explain who they are in the background?
Well, I mean, essentially, they are the normal populace of the Imperium, really, who have been drafted to fight on behalf of the Emperor of Mankind in the Imperial Guard. However, obviously, that's quite a simplistic way of putting it, but essentially, Imperial Guard is obviously made up of billions of people. I mean, and some of them aren't people. I mean, there are some, I presume, some abhumans sprinkled in there as well, and various other bits and pieces. There's, depending on how they suit where they're being recruited from, for instance, because essentially regiments of Guard are typically recruited from single planets or systems where their cultures match up and their styles match up, so that when they are fighting, they can fight effectively as a unit from their own world and and their tactics, their regimes, all that kind of match up. So typically you find that when it's raised, they'll be from some form of world where they're regularly recruited from as well. It's not like you don't just do it once. Normally they class the world as saying, we'll have recruits from you X amount of X amount every year, whatever. We want 3 foundings from you this year. If you don't give them to us, because it's their version of tithing. If they can't tithe money, they can tithe people.
The resources a planet can provide.
Precisely,
So, I mean, you're right. I mean, occasionally you'll get regiments that are merged together from different planets. If they're like a particular regiment is taking extreme casualties and can no longer perform, as an independent body, it can be found to be merged with another regiment, which we might get into later. But essentially, that's what happens.
But also, if maybe their homeworld gets destroyed.
Yeah, that does happen, or false traitors.
Yep.
There's all different aspects that can lead to a regiment being by itself.
Yeah.
But you're right. Yeah. So you've also got the PDF.
Oh yeah, Planetary Defence Forces.
Force. Yeah, which are essentially, in the grand scheme of things, your home guard. The guys that will be remaining on the planet to protect the planet from invasion. Well, the Imperial Guard may be raised. The regiment may be raised on Valhalla. But then it might be sent off on missions across the galaxy. Well, Valhalla will also have a PDF force. I mean, even Marine chapters on their homeworlds, they have PDFs as well. Because, why wouldn't you have a mass force of guard to protect your army, protect your planet?
Yeah.
So, yeah. And also, you've got the military Tempestus.
Oh, yes, of course.
The stormtroopers, the elite boys, the toy soldiers. They get all the good gear. They are the better trained, generally, than most standard guard. They tend to be recruited from. They tend to be orphans, and then they're recruited and trained from birth. So unlike Marines, they're not enhanced in any way. Probably they might get super food, but they won't get.
They do get some nice guns though.
Oh, they get all the good gear.
Yeah,
they're like your standard special forces that you have.
The SAS, the SAS of the 40k world.
Yeah, the SAS, just absolutely thousands of them. So yeah, and so the Imperial Guard tend to be used to go to planets, and they're like the bludgeoning force to take back a planet from an enemy, or to garrison it as well. If, for instance, like Armageddon was coming up, and they knew the Orcs were coming, they would send in as many regiments as they could to fortify the planet. They wouldn't just rely on the PDF on that planet. They would
not at all.
No.
Which is quite a cool thing about them, really, because you get quite a varied backstory to most regiments as well. So they come from everywhere, and they're also tossed in together sometimes to fight, with other things. And then there's rivalries, there's little feuds and stuff like that, which is quite cool.
Yeah, definitely. You kind of like a lot of the regiments you'll see have got a particular theme. So like that's at Valhalla. The Valhalla Ice Warriors, and they're very kind of like a Soviet-esque theme, aren't they? They're dressed up. They've got their little red stars faces.
Talon Raiders as well, quite a desert culture people. Which quite cool. I quite like them as well. Actually, I like their models as well. It's a shame they're not really been sort of redone.
Yeah, they're kind of been ignored a little bit, which is a bit of a shame, isn't it? But generally, if you've got a regiment from one of the Games Workshop books, the theme will run throughout. You'll be able to say, if they appear on the battlefield instantly, if they've got the correct models, you'll go, oh, well, that's Talon.
Like the Mordians are a good example as well, because they're straight coats and caps. It's quite. I suppose that's one thing I like about the Guard regiment. Actually, they are very obvious which one's which, as well, just by their dress uniform, which is quite good. And I think that really is really cool testament to the 40k universe in this particular faction, in that you can see how large it is, because we're just talking about the ones that are in the book. I mean, obviously these are regiments that have got more spotlight, but there's you think about it, there's billions of worlds.
Oh yeah.
There's potentially loads of other regiments that we haven't even touched upon.
You can make your own up.
Exactly. Yeah. Especially the new Psychic Awakening book as well, I might add, because they give them custom regiments. So
yeah, exactly. You can make your own regiment rules in there. You can model them. They're so easy to kit bash compared to some of our armies.
Yeah, definitely.
You can go with theme and run with it, really. I've definitely done that a couple of times with my Guard forces. Right, so that is who the Guard are. Now, shall we go on to a little bit on models available before?
Let's do models. That's a good idea. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea, man.
So, Tom, you've got all the pictures there. Do you want to do your models first for your Games Workshop model?
Yeah, okay. So let me just get.
Or drink.
That sounds like a good idea, mate. Right, I am now putting up my one, which is... Voila! It is a Storm Sword from Games Workshop. I know, it's amazing. You can see it right there, Dom, floating just to the left of you. Yeah. Don't go too near. So now, I like siege-based tanks, personally. And I know this is maybe... Obviously, this is a Baneblade chassis, obviously. But obviously, Games Workshop did a lot of these. Quite a few. It must be what? When did they bring this kit out? 10 years
Yeah, a
ago?
few years ago now.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. I remember because these were quite big when Apocalypse first. That book came out. One of the ones that we used. So it must have been '07 or something like that. I think '08 or '07. And obviously you made up a Baneblade. A couple of other people I knew made up similar ones to that, or the Storms, the Shadow Sword, I should say. And me wanting to be slightly different, because what I do this sometimes just to be different, which is not necessarily
awkward.
Just to be awkward. Yeah, I picked the the Storm Sword, which I think at the time probably was one of the worst ones. I think as well. Actually, I don't think it was particularly brilliant. But rules wise, that's rules. But model wise, I just love the short stubbed cannon at the front, and and the idea that it's kind of reason for being designed that way, so they can go through packed cities and fire that cannon into low-lying buildings and basically clear them out from from people that are inside it. Also, typically it has the heavy flames on the side, so it literally burns. Keeps everyone around sort of away from it. And I just think I think actually if there's one iconic tank for the Guard, this would be the chassis, not just this particular tank. Would be one of the ones you would think of. Because I remember when it first came out, we were all pretty impressed. And even that Seagull was.
Glad you can hear it. The door is open, Tom.
It's okay, mate. I know, mate. It's fine. I understand. But yeah, that's that. So that's one of the reasons I picked this, because I think it's also quite an iconic Guard tank just in itself. You look at that and you go, that's Imperial Guard. I mean, obviously I know there's other ones that do the same thing, but if you're looking for something big that says really has a statement about it, one of these is, I think, and it's just and also it's a lovely kit. To be fair, it is a lovely kit. Even now, it's not too bad to put together, and it is possible to modify it so you can get all the weapons on it if you're willing to put the time in.
Yeah, I mean that is that model because I think that's on the Shadow Sword chassis, isn't it?
I think. Oh yeah, sorry. There's two slides.
So that and the Baneblade chassis, they were game changers. They were the ones that first super heavies that came out way before the likes of Imperial Knights. And when they came out, like you said, everyone was just like, "Wow, these are amazing! Look at the size of them!" And Games Workshop just kicked it out of the park. I mean, that kit is still stands the test of time easily. It's a very impressive kit, and I've definitely had several Baneblades and Shadow Swords over the years, and it's just one of those models that you keep seeing, and it's always impressive when you have one on the battlefield.
Yeah, I think because it's a tank model, it stands the test of time because a tank is a tank. Yeah, it doesn't evolve that much really. It's just a massive metal behemoth.
Yeah. So actually, saying that, Tom, tanks that don't evolve much over time, I think will go into my Games Workshop model.
Okay, well, so just bring your one up, which I'm hoping I can find by what is being called. Would this be the LR?
It would be the LR.
Yes. There we go. It is there.
The Lehman Russ. So the reason I picked the Lehman Russ is because it was possibly one of the first plastic tanks from Games Workshop that they mass produced. And that kit has changed over the years because I've got several variants of my Guard Army. So very subtle changes. But if you didn't know what the differences were, you wouldn't know the difference between that model that's been designed in the early 90s to the one
no, that's a fair point.
Games Workshop shelf last week. And I absolutely love that kit. Every time I've had a Guard Army, I've had a Lehman Russ, and it's always a pleasure to build. Even more so now because they've kind of changed the tracks and make it a little bit easier. Because back in the day, you'd have the tiny little bits and you have to glue them all together. It'd be At least now they give them in strips, so it's a bit better. But yeah, that model is so good. It's like the T-34.
Yeah.
40K. You can just do what you want with it. It's such an amazing tank, and the silhouette of it's from a distance. You always know what it is.
Especially the normal battle cannon one. You just know, bang, that's a Lehman Russ. Yeah.
Everybody who's played 40K knows what a Lehman Russ is.
Yeah.
If you stopped playing 40K like 10 years ago and you had that army in your attic, and then suddenly you're like, even longer than 10 years. Let's say 20 years ago, and you went, I'm going to get back into it now. 9th editions are coming out. I'm going to see what models I've got, and bam, Lehman Russ.
Yeah.
And that's going to keep its value. that model is not changing in any way.
And the weapon options on it are ridiculous as well. The amount of different things they got for different situations, incredible.
Yeah, definitely. The amount of weapons and stuff you get on that kit is brilliant, and I absolutely love it. I mean, the rules are pretty good now, being able to fire twice. There's lots of different things have been tweaking on it. They're not particularly expensive to bring into games, and they're pretty durable. And you've got to deal with Lehman Russ.
Yeah, you can't really leave them running around.
Russ. And that for myself, I think my current guard army, I might have 13 of them.
So I've only got 3.
Yeah, I'm a massive fan of Lehman Russes.
And I've got a Nova cannon on one of mine.
Oh, how cute! That's a novelty.
Don't know why that is.
But, I'm a massive fan, and that's the reason I picked it, because I was like, ooh,
no, that's cool. That's cool. I get completely. It's a one. It was always one of my choices as well. So
yeah, it's a very familiar model, and I really like it. So I think we should go with the Forge World models, and then go into characters and conflicts.
Okay, fine.
So let's do your Forge World model.
Well, it's models for me actually, mainly because there's more than one in my choice. It is the Death Caller Cree Infantry Squad. There you go. That's why I said there's more than one.
Yeah, up here. Of course you have. They're right here. Hi,
yes,
guys.
they are. There's 10 of them there.
Yeah, wow. Terry.
Now, obviously, this particular choice will come clear in a bit, but for me, these guys, I think they are one of the coolest looking infantry models in the 40k range, in my opinion. And if I had a lot more spare cash, I would definitely consider. Well, I mean, just to give you an idea, that squad of 10 is 46 quid.
Bargain.
So, and as much as you really want to do it, it's a lot of money just to drop on infantry, really, if you compare what you can pick up normally. I mean, it's something I might do in the future. I don't know, but just down to the fact that they look very different to the Cadians, for starters.
Yep.
And they look different from the Catachan. They look different from completely different from everything else. The great coats, the gas masks, even the las guns themselves are a different pattern to what you'd normally pick up from a standard. Yeah, it's interesting. And actually, the rest of their range is pretty good as well. To be honest, even their heavy weapons teams are slightly different looking. And even the bayonets look pretty sweet as well.
They're really nice models.
They're just very nice.
If you ever see them at events, like if you go to, or you're wandering past a gaming table, you just look at the detail, and they are absolutely beautiful sculpts.
Yeah,
I mean,
Sorry, go on.
Like we said earlier, like you look at a regiment and instantly you know what they are. And Death Corps, iconic.
Yes.
Absolutely iconic.
And typically you find that people that do collect them take so much time and care on them, they look superb. Because they're already investing quite a lot just to get them, So you don't.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't want to muck it up. So you just tend to find that anyone who does collect them, it just does a great job on them as well, in my opinion. So.
Yeah, they're not a beginner's army.
No, not by a long shot. So would you like your one up there?
I would, yes.
Ooh, is it this big old boy?
Hello.
The Minotaur.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah. I love that tank. There's very few Forge World tanks. So I own one for my Renegades and Heretics. And there's very few Forge World tanks where I'm tempted, like especially Lords of War, to get another one. Or even worse, get 2 more.
Well, I mean, why have 2 when you could have 3?
Exactly. So I love that tank. The stories behind it, the model itself, the model is just a massive block of resin. Like, if you have that on the board, people don't know what it is. Like, they never come across it because it's not, one of the optimized things to take. And sometimes it does really well.
Yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't.
It's got a lot of randomness on it, hasn't it, really? Let's be honest.
I've been able to pretty much one-shot a Leviathan before with that. But at the same time, sometimes I don't really get anything. So... it's hit and miss, but it's cool. It's got a 5-up and vulnerable for shooting, because the armor is so thick on it. Essentially, if you look at that tank, the tank is in reverse, so the guns are actually pointing out the rear of the tank, which is quite cool because I like to think it just kind of drives along and reverses into a building.
2 guns pointing out the windows.
Yeah, I mean the detail on that kit is brilliant. Like there was so much detail in it. I had to leave some detail out. I was like, you've got the driver at the front who's got the
levers.
The levers sitting in there. You don't even see him, but he's giving you all the kits for it. And
very cool.
Yeah, I love the story. Like, you still apparently see them in the 41st millennium when they're normally in museums. And they're kind of like, if you've got an artillery regiment, it's like their sacred unit that they never really bring out. It's for like parades only. And so, for instance, my Renegades and Heretics basically stole one, and essentially just,
a raid on the museum.
they just go, "Ooh, this is a big tank," and carted it off.
Nice.
And I really like it. It's a cool unit, and it's something that people either ignore because they don't really know what it's doing, or they focus a lot of fire on it.
I mean,
it's pretty tough.
I think in the next edition, in 9th, I think it may be a bit better on the grounds that, especially against Horde armies, because you're going to get that guaranteed number
of 4d6 shots, pick the two highest.
Yes,
so it might turn into.
I think it levels it out a bit anyway, at least. Because I must admit beforehand, if you had a bad roll. You know,
I mean, that's it. I mean, you're averaging a relatively good roll, but it's very all over the place. But yeah, I like it just because of the look of it and the background of it. I think it's such a cool unit. So yeah, that's my 4-year-old unit.
Okay.
So shall we go into regiments?
I mean, just so you're aware, with my regiment, I'll be covering my conflict at the same time. Because it's kind of what I found quite cool, and it does explain them.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what, actually, I'll do my regiment first, and then you can do yours, and then follow into your conflict, and I'll do my conflict afterwards.
That sounds like a good idea, mate. You go for it, mate.
So, I picked the Catachan Jungle Fighters, because they're awesome. They're very iconic in the Guard, compared to some of the others that you might have heard about. Cadia.
Vanilla Guard.
Essentially, like, they're known as mini Ogrins because if you look at the models for them, they are just like ripped. They wear t-shirts. They have red bandanas. They have lots of like short range weapons as well, but they are huge. And
Arnold Schwarzenegger in Commando.
The inspiration of the Catachan Jungle Fighters is essentially every 80s film you've ever seen.
Yes.
And they've just gone, all these characters, put them in one squad and then duplicated it by X. And they're still, like, the metal models were one of the first metal models that I really fell in love with when they first came out. They were one of the first regiments to get plastic models. In fact, I think they were the first regiment to get plastic. You can kind of see that now. They're a little bit dated. Unfortunately, the standard Guard Catachan models. The heavy weapons and HQ teams pretty good still. The basic infantry not so good.
No.
And they're still getting new models. Like they're almost like the version of Primaris Lieutenants in the Imperial Guard.
Well, had the Colonel recently, didn't they, as well? And that and the other one.
You had the Colonel. You had the woman.
Yeah.
With the Bolter, I believe.
Yes.
You had Slime Marbo as well.
Cool.
So yeah, they do get a fair few models, and you think, why don't the Cadians get any? I mean, essentially their recruiting grounds are, but Catachan.
Sorry to you Cadian fans out there.
Yeah, it fell. Catachan didn't. Like during the 13th Black Crusade, they were under threat from a big void whale and an orc war. And like Gilliman and essentially like all his Primaris, like a load of Primaris Marines were going to go off and like save Catachan, and then they turned up and all the jungle fighters were just like sitting around, like just go, oh no, we did that. That's that we
sorted
that way. Yeah, don't worry about it. Gone. And so these guys are just like, if you read any book about them, they're brilliant. They just go out and do their stuff, and there's no messing about. They're essentially like Schwarzenegger's lot from Predator. Like, they're amazing. I think there's even a story where they were fighting against orcs, and the orcs were so impressed that they painted a red bandana onto one of their stompers or one of their garments. either think of it like, well, it does so well for them.
Let's try it out ourselves.
Add some sort of mark of respect. And yeah, obviously they're from the planet Kazachan. Population's pretty small, essentially because if you grow up on Kazachan, you are probably got a life expectancy quite short due to the volatile nature of living on a death world. A death world, of course, is a planet which will essentially probably try and kill you. So the plants, the animals, they're basically going to try and kill you at some point. And if you're on Kazachan, you know how to fight essentially when you're at school, when you're at primary school.
It's probably earlier than that.
Yeah. I mean, and so being on such a horrible, hospitable planet, they will raise the toughest recruits they possibly can. And they're quite rebellious in a lot of ways. Like if a commissar is assigned to the regiment jungle, there's sometimes accidents and the commissar won't be returning. They get fragged. So they take a lot of theme and stuff also from, of course, the Vietnam War, the American side of the Vietnam War. I like them. I think they're cool models. I really just, cool model. I think they're a cool regiment. I really hope they get some decent new.
To be honest, I hope any Guard regiment that isn't Cadian gets some new models. Quite frankly,
I think they've been really neglected, Guard, for years. Definitely. I was thinking earlier coming up to this. I was like, they've never been in a starter box.
No.
And it's one of the key regiment, key armies from all the way back from Rogue Trader, and they've never been in a starter box, which is such a shame. Because they always want to go to an army that you can associate with in a lot of ways. And Guard are just number one, in my opinion. You watch a film like Starship Troopers, and you go, "That's Imperial Guard." Saving Private Ryan, Imperial Guard.
Yeah.
You don't go, the Space Marine. You never think this. But anyway, that's my kind of rant and my regiment over. Tom, do you want to go into yours and then maybe your conflict?
Well, it's going to be at the same time. So it's kind of explained, because to explain them is to explain the conflict. That's just it. So
it's deep.
It is. To be honest, the Death Corps. I'm doing Death Corps to Krieg. So because I actually listened to something a few weeks ago about them. It was I think it was on Voldemort's channel. I was just listening to one of his stories of lore and stuff, which is quite interesting. And I've done a bit more reading on them since as well. And I just found them quite a fascinating faction actually, or regiment I should say, because they weren't. Death Corps Krieg wasn't. The planet they started on was literally not designed for this particular kind of generation of troops as it was now. So, and to explain the Corps Krieg is to do the conflict. So I'm going to cover basically the Civil War on Krieg, which is the conflict that actually births the Death Corps of Krieg. So anyway, obviously Krieg is the planet that this is all occurring on, which is where they come from, and it was probably one of the quite a very prosperous hive world, basically. They tied billions to the Imperial war effort and everything, and in monetary terms, in trade. That was their main kind of thing. It was quite a nice world as well. There's just lots going on. It was very well off. So well off, in fact, that all the autocrats and the high autocrat that covered the whole running of the area basically thought, we give quite a lot to the Imperium, but we don't get a lot back. Essentially, and they actually thought, we don't want to do this anymore. We want to. I think what we're going to do is we're going to go independent.
Why wouldn't you?
So essentially, the high autocrat basically declared independence and essentially renounced the Emperor as the divine master. Said no, we're not interested anymore. We've given you too much of us. And the gamble was that basically because the Imperium is such a large place that no one is going to give a monkeys if one planet decides to
little planet called Krieg.
Yeah, and in fact,
no one knows. Yeah.
In fact, that is actually true. That is basically what happened because no one really gave a damn about it, to be honest, except for one man, Colonel Ferrograd.
Ferrograd.
Yeah. Now he was actually. Now he was stationed. Let me just find the name of this place. It was. He was the colonel. Yeah. in a high, not Colonel Ferrograd, it was the colonel, it was High Ferrograd, sorry, it was the colonel in charge at Ferrograd, and basically when he saw everything that was going on, he was like, "Oh, I better stop this because I'm in charge of the essentially the Imperial Defence Force here, and nothing to do with the autocrat forces. It was purely Imperium, so that's why they were obviously still loyal to what was even though everything was going to pot around them. And he basically called for support from the Imperium, and they basically sent a message back saying, "Well, there's no one around at the moment, unfortunately, so no." And obviously,
that's a no.
yeah, and he's basically like, "Well, what do you want me to do?" And he said, "Well, we need you to hold Krieg at all costs." Yeah. Basically, that was the pretty much the only command he got. He then got some information about something that may help him do this, which is located somewhere in a long forgotten part of kind of like a silo somewhere, a long forgotten part of Krieg's history from the old Age of Strife, so it was Age of Darkness, one of those ages where everything had kind of got forgotten. Age of something, yeah. And so he took his, after basically losing the initial fights with his forces and having to fall back very quickly. I mean, he fell back really quickly to the point where the autocrats' armies all turned up at the hive and went expecting this really heavy resistance, and they're like, "There's no one here. What? There's just no one here." And so they literally march on all the way through it, don't find anyone, and then they're like, "Okay, well, all right, don't know where he's gone." And they kind of didn't really go after him really, which is a big mistake for them in all seriousness. So basically, he's obviously fallen back to this place that he's been told about, and he's found there essentially some Dark Age old missiles, which are, I suppose, the best way I can think of describing them is like the virus bombs that were used on like Istvan to try and clear out the thing. It was some pretty horrific stuff. It was. It wasn't to the point where it would actually melt through even protective stuff, but it was very poisonous, very kind of up there on the old scale of apocalypse. And obviously he'd locked himself in a bunker, so this colonel was quite happy to sort of launch every single missile all over the globe. And obviously the people who were in the hives and locked down managed to survive as well. And essentially then it turned the whole of Krieg into a wasteland, essentially. There was nothing of worth left on it anymore. However, this then started basically a 500-year war of the loyalists that were still there from this particular band, recruiting, regenerating, getting stuff sorted out, gradually clawing back the entire planet over the course of 500 years, which was really, really cool. This is basically what turned these people into the Deathcore of Krieg. This whole process of war, constant war. Even if they were born new, it was like, no, you're growing up. Where are you going? Into the army. That's it. No choice. They're going out into the wastelands, wearing the rebreather gear, which was basically essentially attached to them at all times because there was no safe place for them, so they almost lived in it. So obviously they eventually took control of the planet back. And then they sent whoever was obviously in charge, and probably not the colonel anymore after 500 years, I have a suspicion. He sent a message to the Terror going, "All right, mate, we got it back."
Yeah.
And I remember that. I do remember listening to this bit here because it's like the clerk who gets the message is a bit like, "Who's Krieg?" Well, you can imagine he's working in this office, which probably gets billions of requests every day. So he sort of goes, "I'll put it here." And then someone goes, "Oh, I remember these guys." It's something about them. So it gets sent to the High Lords of Terror, and then they go back and say, "Oh, you've got it back. What's your, what's going on there?" And they're like, "Well, we're all done. We've got a few regiments that you might want to use." And they're like, "What?" And they're sort of like, they brush it off to start with, and they're like, then they get another request saying, no, really, we want to go to the most deadliest place that you can send us. We want to go where the fighting is the thickest. We want to go somewhere where it's horrible, no one else wants to go. So obviously they sort of go, all right, fair enough, they want to go there. We're not going to stop them. So they send it, but then they find that they're like really good. They're like stuff that these guys are like just trashing and winning wars that really Guard shouldn't be, if you see what I mean. It's mainly down to the fact that they're so, by now, this army is so built on warfare, and even to the point where I think they're sort of genetically modified to a certain degree to grow them faster, to make sure that because essentially the planet of Krieg now can produce 50 million soldiers a year. That's what apparently they can turn around. And things like even that their officers are drawn from the rank and file as well, which is another interesting fact. And essentially they are still under the impression that they need to atone for their planet's rebellion. They don't believe they've done enough to redeem themselves in the eyes of the Emperor.
There's almost like a cult of death, isn't there?
Yeah. They're very fatalistic. They say that the only way to do it is to go. Their willingness to die for their cause is so high. That's normally what the difference in a fight with them is. Because they're like, well, they're willing to just die. We can't stop them. And they specialise in siege warfare as well, which is quite cool. That's one of their biggest things they do, in grinding the enemy down basically through sheer attrition. And so typically from a gear point, obviously you saw the picture. It's normally nice, the old big great coat, boots to match, and then the difference is obviously their Mark 9 helmet, which they call it. It's a fully sealed unit for them. It's just slightly different to a normal guard army, I think. Then that's kind of built into their whole greatcoat setup as well, so that they got the the breather that comes through, and it's kind of their standard bit of kit. Whereas a lot of guard would probably only put that on if they were requested to. Maybe they just see it as a necessity to live. So which is and it's cool. And another interesting fact about them is that they don't like chimeras really. They prefer the Gorgon transport. The Gorgon holds 500 people. It's not the 12 and the Chimera or whatever it is. They like to move in numbers. That's kind of
yeah. And they have got a lot of unique units as well, haven't they?
Yeah, totally. I mean, and like I said before, we're looking at the models. They're so cool to look at, and if anyone was really wanted to start a new expensive project, I would definitely recommend them if you wanted to do guard. I think. Plus, just reading the story like this, I mean, I've probably butchered a couple of bits in there because I was just doing it in a very segmented kind of way. But it's such a cool story, and I really recommend anyone who wants to just go read about them or check out some other lore cool stuff. There's some excellent stuff out there. But that's basically my regiment and my conflict, which I hope was quite cool.
It was cool. I always like hearing about Deathfall. They're very cool. So I'm going to pick an operation, a mission, rather than necessarily a whole conflict.
Fair enough. Yeah.
So this mission, it kind of goes into a little bit like you said there, like the bureaucracy of the Guard or the Imperium, like no one knows what's going on, kind of thing. Like, oh, yeah, right, cool, Krieg, well done. You might get an essence of this from here. Right, so this took place during the Third War of Armageddon. Imperium taking a bit of a pounding. Orcs obviously doing their thing, stomping all over that planet. So Imperial High Command decided that the Imperial Guard forces essentially need a morale boost, get themselves back in the game. And they, of course, the Imperial Guard were led by Commissar Yarrick, the old man, everyone's favourite commissar. And he used to have a Baneblade called the Fortress of Arrogance. Unfortunately, he lost it.
As you do. I mean, Baneblades are quite small.
Yeah. Well, he lost it in battle, Tom, against the Orcs. So there was an operation, which we'll go into, called Operation Thunderstorm, which was a task for the 18th Army Group, which Cadian force of about 30,000 troops, tanks, artillery, a whole battle group. So 30,000 is not a massive amount for Guard, I don't think. Their job was to go to the Orc-held planet of Golgotha and to locate and liberate the Fortress of Arrogance. And so this Cadian force, led by some pretty good commanders, went in with a big tank company and landed on the planet, and with the help of a small task force, with the help of the AdMech forces, landed and slowly made their way across this horrible planet of desert and storms, and essentially a whole Orc planet. And 30,000 guardsmen had to basically battle their way through this massive Orc force, going through these storms, being constantly harassed by speed freaks that would be coming up behind them. They'd try and lose them in these massive sandstorms, trying to avoid them the best they can. Fortunately, not all the time, and slowly before they got to the resting place of the Fortress of Arrogance, a lot of them had been killed. They then came across this massive orc wall that basically stretched as far as the eye could see, and had to punch a hole through that wall with what super heavies they had. So I think they had like a shadow sword, like a company of bane blades, and had to basically punch through this hole and then slowly just go through. And this is all based on the book Gunheads. Let me just find out who the author is. One moment. Because it is a very good book. It's not particularly long. I've read it a couple of times. I don't necessarily read 40k books all the time, but I quite like this. By Steve Parker. And essentially, they get into this orc city. The mechanized troops start pouring out, and it's like this street fighting in an orc city of like guardsmen just trying to hold them back. Like the bodies are like piling up, like as high as you can see. But eventually, they find the Fortress of Arrogance. They're able to hold off the orc forces until they can basically repair and extract the tank. The tank is then taken from Golgotha back to Armageddon, where Yarrick literally just welcomes it back, brings it straight into battle. And does it boost the morale of the guardsmen? Who knows? Who really knows if that did or didn't?
It boosts the arrogance of them.
Like, you got 30,000 people, and I'm pretty sure, even if 10,000 survive, that's 20,000 people on a fool's errand just to go get this. It's just the Imperial.
Maybe a commander said it as a joke and didn't think anyone would take it seriously.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Someone will approve this.
Make a note. Go for 30,000 troops. I really like that book, and I like the way that the Guard are portrayed there, that they're quite level-headed a lot of the time, and they're just doing what they're told to do, and unfortunately the task itself is
the Guard machine.
Thankful. Yeah, so there you go. Right, so let's move on to characters. Have you got an Imperial Guard character you'd like to talk about, Thomas?
Yeah, I've got one. I'm not going to go into too much detail because there's obviously quite a few books about this chap. I don't want to ruin too many stories, so I'm just going to go a little bit into why I like the character. It's basically Ibram Gaunt from Gaunt's Ghosts.
Nice.
Now the reason I picked this today is actually because I've just finished re-listening to First and Only, which I've just forgot how much. It was a very enjoyable Guard book as well. But it's also I quite like the commissar, the idea of a commissar in the Imperial Guard army as well, but a good commissar that is. And I think Gaunt is kind of like the epitome of a good commissar.
Yeah.
If you read about it. Essentially, just to give you a small bit of background, he's basically the son of a second in command of the Jantine patricians, who was basically killed by orcs. He went to go and train at let me just get this one there, the Schola Progenium on Ignatus Cardinal as a trainee commissar, basically. He then got transferred to the Hyrcan regiments to be tutored by Commissar Delane Oktar, which was basically his main mentor, essentially, through his... basically, that's not a bad way. And then they went to a place called Derendara, where during this entire campaign, he actually met a psyker who just pulled him to one side and said, "Oh, you need your ghosts," kind of thing. It was a bit of a prelude to the future. And at the end of the whole fight, he got called back in by an Inquisitor to talk to this psyker, because she wouldn't talk to anyone except for Gaunt, basically. And essentially, he went in there and gave him some information about his future and also why he would only speak to her. And basically, he also pointed out that his uncle, his beloved uncle Dersius, had essentially caused his father to die through retreating, through cowardice. So this is basically what kind of makes Gaunt a little bit, because one of his first things he has to do as a full commissar after this battle, because he got promoted in that one, is to confront Dersius and condemn him for cowardice, which he does. And he almost gets killed himself by a horrible gut wound with a chainsword, but he obviously kills his target quite happily. And then essentially he ends up, obviously I could go on for quite a bit with this, but I'm not going to go too far. But essentially he ends up eventually being gifted the command of a founding of regiments on a planet called Tanith. And I think it was 3 foundings, if I remember correctly. There was three foundings where he was going to collect essentially and become in charge of. And then basically chaos turn up and essentially obliterate the world while they're basically just getting the regiments off planet. And essentially the first and I think the second and the third essentially are destroyed. And Gaunt does not let the one regiment that has managed to get kind of to the point of leaving to go back and fight on Tanith. So he essentially takes them away and says, no, we need you here. You don't sacrifice yourselves for a world that's basically already dead. And obviously that's kind of like didn't go down too well to some people, as the books will say. But essentially he then forges this very unique fighting force while being the Colonel Commissar of it from the remnants of this division that of Guard that escaped from Tanith. They come with a very, very specific skill set. They've got great stealth, great demolitions. They've got very good marksmen. All this kind of stuff. Because it was quite a, I don't know. I mean, Tanith was a very kind of woodland-based forest world, which is where they had a lot of skills like this. And Gaunt, being the commissar, the great commissar, he gets the best out of them all the time. And he's got his attitude is very much like he's in it for his men. He does care about his men. He knows how to sort of inspire them, and he's always at the front of the battle if he can help it, because that's he likes to lead from the front and lead by example. And also he's just a great character, really. And if you haven't read the Gaunt's Ghost novels by Dan Abbott, I would 100% recommend. And just I don't want to go, as I said, I don't want to go too further, but if you want to read about a really good character, definitely go and.
I completely agree, mate. I mean, Gaunt's Ghost is up there. I mean, for me, it's probably up there next to Horus Heresy. In a lot of ways, it's probably better because it's more focused, because it's by one author rather than a dozen authors. It's got one author who's got an image, a picture of what he wants, and takes it all the way through. And there's stuff in those books that you don't see on the tabletop. 100%.
And likewise, it's a shame there's no model for him.
There used to be.
Oh, of course they did have the Tanith First Aid, didn't they? Sorry.
Still pretty by their own production.
It was a team, wasn't it, of the regulars, so to speak. Yeah,
you had the standard characters, and a couple of extra guys. So it was quite cool.
Yeah, that was my choice anyway. So
nice. Well, Tom, what other Imperial Guard video? It wouldn't be complete without mentioning this guy.
I know you picked
not Yarrick, because we've already mentioned Yarrick. It is Slime Arbo.
Oh, the really quiet one.
Yeah, the mysterious figure.
So you say Sylvester Stallone? Sorry.
Well, yes.
Oh, sorry, I've got confused.
Essentially, he is based on Rambo.
Very cool.
I could tell you everything he's done. But his achievements and his legend are almost enough. All I've got to say is Slime Marbo, and people are like, oh yeah, brilliant. I mean, Slime Marbo threw a grenade and killed 5 orcs. Then it exploded. Slime Marbo poked the warp right in the Eye of Terror. No. I've got loads of these.
Oh dear.
Flak Armor wears Slime Arbo for protection.
Do you know what? I'm running out of storage for this video.
Arbo doesn't take showers. He takes blood baths.
Oh dear.
So anyway, Slime Arbo, it's like we said, obviously he's from Kazachan. What we were saying earlier about Kazachan taking action heroes and forming a squad, what they've literally done is they've got all the action heroes from the 80s and the 90s, put them in a blender and mold them into Slime Arbo.
Definitely.
Because this man is a one-man killing machine. He's had several incarnations on the battlefield and several rule sets as well. I absolutely love him, just because he's absolutely insane. But a lot of his actions he has tend to get covered up because they're almost unbelievable. So, for instance, on the Third War of Armageddon, Marbo was there. Why wouldn't he be there? And he was in a cityscape there and took out several war bands single-handedly. I don't know how believable that is, but I think he's pretty good. Also, in the 13th Black Crusade, Sly Marbo was in the area, and he came across chaos camps completely abandoned, except for the occasional body which would have a headshot. Everyone else had gone. You'd even find dead Chaos Marines with similar wounds, and it would basically boost the morale of other guardsmen. No one would really acknowledge who it was, but it was pretty much recognised by the Kath-Chan. It was Marbo.
The human predator.
We said earlier that a Kath-Chan jungle fighter is essentially Arnie and Commando or Predator. Yeah. Like, you ramp that up to 11, and you have Sly Marbo.
I'd almost say he's kind of the combination of Predator and Arnie from Predator, because of some of the antics he manages to pull. Yeah, it's just.
Yeah. I've got a whole list of stuff here.
Yeah.
Sly Marbo sleeps with a pillow under his gun, so he's always ready to go. The official name in the Imperium for Exterminatus is Sly Marbo.
Get out. Off you go.
Okay, well, I'll carry on one more with Rowboat Gilliman keeps an inspirational pict of Sly Marbo with him at all times. Because Sly Marbo. Sly Marbo won a staring contest with a Necron. And Necrons don't have eyelids.
They've got lights.
Fair enough. Sly Marbo is just he's such a fun unit to have on the battlefield. Like, story wise, he's a legend. He's probably one of these people that might have had several incarnations. He's probably died and then come back, or there might be a squad carrying out these actions and putting it to one man. But I think he's brilliant.
It's cool as a model for it, though. I think that's the.
The new model's quite cool. The old model was pretty cool as well, and he's been there in several incarnations of the Imperial Guard Codex, where he just suddenly he's there again, and you're like, well, I gotta take him. My story of Sly Marbo, Tom, as we tend to say this quite often, is myself and Tom had an Apocalypse game years before the channel, and Sly Marbo, I was playing Guard, Tom was playing Templars, and Sly Marbo appeared behind the enemy lines, manned a
flat cannon.
Threw a charge and took a Titan out.
Yeah.
Titan was quite wounded, but he did destroy a Titan.
He did enough. He did quite a few wounds, if I'm totally honest.
It was 60 points.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. I don't know what he is now, but I love him.
I like to think even if that Titan fell on him, he would just done a push up with it or something.
Yeah.
It's like, get off.
Yeah, get off. Be you. That was my my one. One more story about Sly Marbo.
Oh dear.
Sly Marbo once shot down a Dakar jet by pointing at it with his fingers and saying, "Bang."
Yeah, but that's believable, and Orc could believe that.
Yeah.
Sly Marbo, he must have shot me.
At first, if you don't succeed, you're not Sly Marbo.
Oh, dumb. Okay, Jesus. Make it stop.
Sly Marbo beat a Warlord Titan at arm wrestling. Anyway, we're done with Sly Marbo stories.
For now.
We've gone through a bit of story on Guard, how they play, some models you can get. Tom, how do you recommend people getting into an Imperial Guard or an Astra Militarum?
I think I would definitely. I wouldn't rush out and buy a load of models to start with at all, in any way, shape, or form. I think you definitely want to decide maybe what regiment or style of play you want to play with your Guard before you do anything like that. Obviously, there's lots of material out there. Obviously, the best two is going to be the Codex plus the Psychic Awakening book, because likewise, if the Greater Good book, and because the other thing is, if you don't like the standard regiments, the Greater Good has ways that you can pick two essential traits that your army gets, which is just like having a regimental doctrine, but you can pick what you want.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's important to have a look at that first before you go off and do any model buying whatsoever, because actually I find, especially with Guard ones, if you're going to want to do a tank army, you don't need to buy as many troops or this, or you buy tanks, but you need to work out which tanks you want to buy as well, because there's lots of variations of the tanks as well, and how you want to kit them out, how you want to model them, and also, as Don will probably say, you can probably find quite a few of these second hand.
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah,
especially
like we mentioned earlier, there's
yeah,
been no starter box for Imperial Guard. Like, you can't buy a big box and split with your mate. You have to buy like the normal starter box,
start collecting set.
Start collecting box, which isn't
Yeah.
great. And because there's never been a big starter box, the models aren't always that cheap. So if you did a guard infantry army, you need a lot of models, and it can add up. So go to your second-hand place to buy some. Also, Goblin Gaming, check them out. Good selection of models. But yeah, there's all different routes of going with Imperial Guard. Like Tom said, you can go with a theme. Like, you can go in with an army idea and then just run with it. Because the thing with let's say the standard Cadian Guardsman is you can use models from Age of Sigmar, from Necromunda, from any human-sized model. You can kind of move in and do a bit of work with them.
Yes.
Even like Gene Stealer Cult, to a degree, you can kind of use some of their vehicles maybe and kind of use them as particular units. So there's all different ways of going around it.
But sadly, the main issue with the guard range in a way is that Cadian is the most prolific.
Yeah.
Which is a shame because there's not really any other patterns out there unless you go to Forge World. Obviously, there is some Catachan that you can pick up, but it's predominantly very old models. Really.
Yeah. Or you go metal models.
We go metal, yeah. And I imagine you can find a lot of the old regiments online if you look around, but that you can't really guarantee the condition. And also, the fact is that it's probably not going to be as cheap as a plastic army, really, even if you're buying it second hand, because they're quite sought after. But yeah, that's just my observation.
Definitely, it's a very, very valid point. Like, you are quite limited on some of your models unless you want to do some serious kit bashing.
Which you may want to, because it is quite fun. It can be quite fun, especially if you've got a really good theme in mind. Because
you've got Skitarii troops, you can do some kit bashing stuff with them as well. So it's like the options are endless. You can have some really unique looking units come out of your
plus, there are companies out there that offer different heads.
Yep.
Different bodies. So as long as you keep, I believe, as long as you keep the model predominantly Games Workshop based. Yeah,
it depends where you want to play as well.
Like that's it. I mean, if you're not too worried about where you want to play, like if you don't want to take it to a tournament, you can probably find some very good conversions out there, or different kits that you can add to a standard Cadian model to make it look pretty good, and in a very different style. So.
And of course, we've had 9th edition announced, so who knows what comes out with them. There might be some new guard models that might suddenly appear, because it's definitely guard, as we said before, force that's a little bit neglected. They need a little bit of love.
I say a little I think a little boring from the variation of looks. I think would be the best way to describe it. Yeah.
But yeah, that's it. So I've thoroughly enjoyed doing a bit of research for this and talking about guard. I've got a big passion for it. Tom, I hope you've enjoyed it as well.
No, of course. No, it's nice. Yeah, I mean, the Deathcore stuff's cool, and if I was to redo my guard, it would definitely be a Deathcore army. But I just can't see myself doing it for the cost at the moment. It's a big outlay, but just enjoying talking about it. In knowing it's a possibility still, as long as I don't suddenly discontinue the models.
Exactly. So I hope you've all enjoyed this video.
Indeed,
hopefully some of you might go out and start a guard army, or if you already got a guard army, you might go out and buy some more models. But this is Tom and Dom from Blacktoe Studios. Thank you very much for watching. If you want to put a suggestion for our next video, put it below.
Definitely.
But until then, we will see you later. Take care.
Bye-bye.